Shoshana Zuboff's 2019 book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, is one of the most influential books written in the fields of surveillance studies, privacy studies, and AI studies in the last 2 decades. Its ambitious aims, insights, and bold statements entice both scholars and laypeople alike to either skim through it or read it in an attempt to get a grasp of our current situation with regards to emerging surveillance technologies and their effects upon society. As such, it deserves close scrutiny that will try to highlight its strong points, analyze its weak points, and deduce what can be confidently said about surveillance capitalism after the critiques. This 3-part analysis is an attempt to offer such critique. In this first part, I will describe the book's main arguments, then talk about the book's strong points, and address 3 particular critiques it got from scholars, which I personally do not believe pose a significant problem. So what is the Age of Surveillance Capitalism all about? It is about an ongoing but relatively new phenomenon in which behavioral data is gathered via the surveillance carried out by companies and platforms in order to predict our actions and in some cases manipulate our behaviors for the aim of producing profit. The book names Google and Facebook as clear and path-breaking examples of this phenomenon, but argues that behind them is a myriad of other companies following suit. In this book, Zuboff argues that we are at the start of a new era in capitalism in which regular exchange systems between producers and consumers do not apply and are replaced by a sophisticated form of exploitation, which is based on reading our behavioral patterns, and instead of using these patterns to provide us better services, uses them to predict our behavior and improve manipulation techniques, which are then sold to the highest bidder. As such, the era of surveillance capitalism marks a clear departure from industrial capitalism and even from some forms of information capitalism. Both still maintain the traditional exchange in which data about individuals benefits those individuals and doesn't just exploit them. Imagine, for instance, you are using a web platform that provides you some service. The platform is gathering behavioral data on you in both visible and invisible means. All the information you feed into this platform is the visible part, but the platform also uses a variety of methods to gather behavioral data on you in an invisible way. For instance, about your location at every single moment you use the platform. Now, this information can be used to just give you a better product. For example, by predicting your needs and offering recommendations such as "this may interest you." Alternatively, the platform can take this same data and use it against you in order to either predict your actions or manipulate your behavior. For example, by pressuring you into buying something when they know you are susceptible to impulsive shopping or to peer pressure. Zuboff argues that this exploitation is not just unfair and isn't just enlarging inequality, but that it is weakening our democracy because surveillance capitalism is perfecting the means to predict our behavior and manipulate us. Since manipulation is sold to the highest bidder, it is bound to be used against us and against the social good. She also has a big problem with how data is gathered and the fact that so much of it is gathered without our consent and behind our backs. It is therefore no surprise that in this book Zuboff sets herself the task of warning the public about this relatively new phenomenon, which, due to its novelty and due to the smokescreens that the big platforms constantly introduce in order to cover their tracks, is not well understood by the public. Her goal is to elevate consciousness about surveillance capitalism so that humanity can change its course from the destructive path that it is on. With regards to methods, Zuboff's text is a qualitative examination which utilizes content analysis and interviews with key figures and integrates them with a large number of secondary sources in order to assemble a complete picture of the examined dynamics. The content analysis focuses mainly on texts written by the practitioners and promoters of surveillance capitalism, either in corporations or the academia. For instance, she analyzes patents filed by surveillance capitalists. The interviews were conducted with key figures in this transformation, mainly developers from Silicon Valley. Now that I described the book's main arguments, it is time to go over what I considered are the strong points of this text. First off, this book should be commended for tackling a big issue. Taking on such big issues is a mammoth task, which Zuboff has done by herself, as evident from her being the sole author. She has done this in a period in which this kind of large-scope research is poorly incentivized, and in which quantity of publications is encouraged over quality. Done correctly, tackling such large issues requires tying together many social phenomena and accounting for the different contexts in which all of these processes occur. This means the researcher needs to be well versed in several scholastic fields and will know how to integrate different phenomena into a unified dynamics which will make sense. In short, Zuboff took upon herself a huge task, and I commend her for this. Moreover, Zuboff is fully committed to her thesis and does not try to please everyone. Often, scholars who tackle large issues try to internalize all the contemporary dominant theories in their text and give special attention to all the dominant writers in the field. Many times, this leads to a text that doesn't commit to one theory, but offers everyone something they might like. I believe it is brave to commit to a theory without pleasing everybody. While it significantly opens you to attack, it makes your theory much more coherent and also makes for a more interesting read. Peppering your text with disclaimers so that nobody could say you ignored X or Y makes for a tedious read, and these disclaimers feel somewhat ritualistic. Surveillance capitalism, which is the main original term this book has to offer, is very catchy and at least partially self-explanatory, which is a good thing. Although scholars in the field noted that Zuboff isn't actually the first academic to use this term, and that she fails to give credit to those who used it before her, since the term was not well known before Zuboff used it, I think it's okay. Moreover, in Zuboff's hands, the concept of surveillance capitalism helps explain in a fairly coherent way a large chunk of the surveillance phenomenon that lacked a coherent conceptualization beforehand. Another strong point is that the large scope of the research allows the author to explore the social consequences of these surveillance practices and doesn't refer to them in mere abstract terms. For instance, she gives abundant descriptions of the detrimental consequences consumers, workers, and the general public face because of Facebook's behavior tracking and behavior modifying activities. This is often a weak point in science, technology, and society writing, where authors don't fully explain what the social consequences of a given technology are. This same large scope allows Zuboff to offer an abundance of evidence that leaves little doubt that the surveillance capitalism phenomena is real. The use of two main case studies, Google and Facebook, clarifies well the dynamic that Zuboff conceptualizes, and to them she adds some more examples that are further illustrative. Her analysis of documents and her interviews with developers and scientists in the behavior analysis and modification field are indicative of many of the phenomena that she talks about and are good underpinning of her arguments. Last among the strong points I wanted to mention is that the book is very accessible, that although it is very long, it is easy to read, and that Zuboff explains the terminology she uses extensively and repeats each argument several times, which make it suitable for the general public and undergraduate levels. After describing the main arguments and what I consider to be the strong points of the book, I now want to address three particular critiques the book received, which I don't think are major issues that should bother us. In the next video, I will address several other critiques on issues that I do think damage Zuboff's argument and pose a strong challenge to it. First is Zuboff's use of hyperbole. Reading the book, one cannot escape the fact that it is filled with bold claims and strong sentences that some of the time seem to be exaggerated for effect. For instance, she writes on Facebook that with a new generation of research tools, it learned to plunder yourself right through to your most intimate core. From our own perspective, while I find some of the hyperbole used unnecessary and even distracting, I do not think it damages the text in any significant way. As Zuboff states explicitly in the last part of the book, one of her aims was to provoke people to feel indignation about surveillance capitalism and to fight people's reluctant acceptance of it as an unstoppable force. Hyperbole seems to be one of the methods Zuboff chose to provoke this indignation, which I find acceptable even if not elegant. Second among this short list of critiques is Zuboff's tendency not to give credit to existing writing in the field. While I do understand where this critique comes from, and it is definitely unpleasant to feel your work in the field was omitted or uncredited, I also think we should weigh the downside of giving credit to the abundant scholarship that exists in the field. Mainly, the downside is reduced focus on readability of the text. An abundance of references and mentions of seminal work can distract the reader and make the text tedious and less engaging. Since the book is tackling such a large issue, I think the standard for giving credit to existing writing should thus be lower. Third, there is the critique that this 2019 book is much too oriented toward the general public so as to be considered as a genuine scholastic contribution. This is a critique I disagree with, since I think Zuboff's aspiration to reach a wide public beyond the academia isn't a bad thing, and that as long as what she is saying is up to date with current scholarship, it can also be considered a scholastic text. There are several historical examples of texts that try to do exactly what Zuboff tried to do with this book, that is, cater to both scholars and general public, which are today an intrinsic part of academic syllabuses in their relevant field. All in all, I believe Zuboff's tendencies towards hyperbole, scarce crediting of existing writing, and orientation toward the general public do not damage the book and are acceptable given the task she took upon herself. The next video will be dedicated to what I consider the most significant critiques that challenge Zuboff's The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. while the third video will be dedicated to what can nonetheless be confidentially said about surveillance capitalism when considering all the critiques.